The sun has scalded the Pecos River Valley for 43 straight days, and every living thing is brittle. Dust pushes through the warped shutters of Elias, Dusty, Mercer's farmhouse, settling across the kitchen table where 3 tin cups wait for water that no longer exists. At dawn, Elias discovered his last steer collapsed by the dry creek, ribs sharp as saw blades, so he drags the carcass behind the barn and buries it in silence, a shovel bite for each name he no longer speaks: wife, son, daughter. Near noon, hoofbeats fracture the heat shimmer. A mule-drawn wagon appears on the cracked trail, its canvas sun-bleached to bone. 3 young women ride inside, Alma, Rosalie, and Cora, refugees from the shuttered convent of Santa Dolores, 30 miles east. They are coated in road dust and uncertainty, but the real shock wears plain on their faces. The driver lies slumped over the reins, an arrow through his back, blood dried to rust. Bandits, maybe Apache renegades, maybe worse, no one stopped to learn the difference. The mule has followed the scent of water, even if only the memory of it, to Elias's forgotten farm. Elias raises his Winchester by reflex. The muzzle wavers toward the women, then lowers as he takes in the arrow and the vacant stare of the dead driver. Without a word he slices the reins, eases the body to the ground, and lays his palm on the mule's lathered neck. Alma's voice shakes when she asks if they may draw from his well. Elias tells her the well quit 2 weeks back. Still, he nods toward the porch. Shade, at least, is free. Rosalie kneels beside the dead driver and folds his hands over his chest. Under her breath a prayer curls into the heat. Cora watches Elias with the flat, assessing glare of someone who has traded safety for freedom and intends never to be cornered again. Alma studies the empty corrals, the caved-in windmill, and the man himself, unkempt beard, eyes like banked coals, calculating whether this place can be their refuge or merely the last stretch of desert before the grave. Inside the farmhouse the air tastes of stale coffee and loneliness. Elias pours what remains of a rain barrel into a cracked basin, rationing half a cup for each woman and leaving himself none. Cora notices, says nothing. Alma does notice and says everything with a brief, reluctant smile that startles them both. Night falls violet and sudden. Coyotes howl from the ridge, and with each cry Rosalie flinches closer to the kerosene lamp as though its trembling halo could tether her faith. The dead driver lies wrapped in tarp outside, awaiting burial. The mule, finally watered, drifts to sleep tied to a post that might snap in the next strong wind. Elias sits apart on the porch rail, carving grooves into a mesquite branch, one for every steer he has lost this month. Alma steps outside and stands beside him. She asks why he stays when the land is clearly dying. Elias shrugs, because someone has to remember it lived. Lightning flares on the horizon, dry and distant, revealing silhouettes on horseback. 2 riders, maybe scouts, maybe the ones who left the arrow. Elias tosses the branch aside, chambers around, and tells Alma to douse the lamp. Inside, shadows swallow the room as he bars the door with a plank scarred by earlier sieges, wolves, debt collectors, the inexhaustible past. The riders circle the farm but keep their distance, calling out in a language Alma cannot place, half Spanish, half threat. They promise water in exchange for the 3 women. Cora's hand drifts to the butcher knife on the table. Rosalie whispers another prayer. The offer hangs like buzzards above fresh carrion. Elias answers with a single rifle shot into the night sky, a warning that splits the silence wider than words. The riders retreat, but everyone inside knows they will return with sunrise, with friends, with fire. The lamp remains dark. In that darkness Elias and the women breathe the same thin air, strangers bound by approaching peril. Outside, the mule shifts uneasily, as if remembering the dead driver's weight. Inside, for heartbeats mark time until morning, each wondering whether the others can be trusted, each clinging to the faint, perilous hope that this desiccated farm might still bloom, if only it can survive one more dawn. Hours drag like spurs across raw hide. The farmhouse is blind but not deaf, every board seems to creak in sympathy with nerve stretched thin. Cora stations herself at the single back window, knife poised, eyes combing the dark for any hint of movement. Rosalie curls in the rocker cradling a rosary whose wooden beads still smell faintly of incense, lips working through half-remembered psalms that now feel less like certainties than whispered negotiations. Alma moves quietly from room to room, studying exits, loose floorboards, the cellar trap beneath a threadbare rug. She is mapping both the house and the man who occupies it. Elias keeps watch from the front, rifle balanced across his knee. Moonlight pours a brittle silver through gaps in the wall, painting him in shards. He lifts his canteen, tips it, nothing. The absence of water feels louder than a gunshot. His gaze lands on the three strangers fate has abandoned at his gate, and some odd tenderness flickers, instantly smothered by memory of the graves on the hill. Sometime after midnight a coyote starts yelping, frantic, then cuts off mid-cry. Elias knows that silence, it's the hush predators make when a larger danger enters the field. He signals Alma with 2 fingers, trouble. She pads to Cora, who snuffs the lantern's pilot flame. Darkness settles, thick as molasses. A new sound breaks the quiet, soft metal clink against glass. Outside, a bottle arcs through the air and explodes against the porch post in a wash of kerosene. A second follows, then a third. Flames crawl up the support beam, hungry and bright. Rosalie gasps, but Cora clamps a hand over her mouth, muffling fear. Elias shoulders the door open, steps into the blaze, and fires again, this time aiming low at sparks where boot heels scuff. Someone yelps, hoofbeats scatter. The fire licks the eaves. Elias hacks at the flames with a wet canvas he'd kept near the trough for just such moments, but the canvas is almost dry. Alma rushes to him, sees the futility, races instead to the pantry. She kicks open barrels, finds a solitary jug of vinegar and douses a flare before it can climb higher. Acid smoke stings eyes, buys seconds. Cora drags a half-filled washtub from the kitchen and together they smother embers until the porch sizzles into sullen charcoal. In the sudden hush, the 4 of them breathe steam into cool night, faces streaked with soot. Alma notices Elias's hands, skin split and blistered. She reaches for a cloth but he shakes his head, later. Dawn stains the eastern sky bruise purple. Over the far ridge dust plumes reveal a posse of riders returning, maybe 6, maybe 10. Their silhouettes stretch long across the sand. Elias calculates angles, ammunition, odds. He has 10 cartridges left. The women have determination, a knife, a half-broken plow handle. The arithmetic leans grim. The mule brays inside its corral, panic rising. Elias unties the gate, slaps the animal's flank, watches it bolt south toward scrubland where bullets won't follow. One less soul to weigh on his conscience. Rosalie murmurs gratitude but quavers when she sees the riders more clearly. Their leader carries a singed kerchief, proof Elias's warning shot grazed him. Alma presses a water-stained map onto the kitchen table. She and Cora propose slipping out the collapsed well shaft, crawling through the dry tunnel to the arroyo and circling north to the abandoned stage stop. Elias listens, surprised, few know of the shaft. Alma shrugs, she read it in his posture, the way his eyes always flick there when he counts resources. Elias almost smiles, almost. Gunfire cracks from outside, splinters a window. Glass showers like ice. The siege has begun. Elias hands the women his spare revolver, 2 bullets only. He takes the staircase, perches in an upstairs alcove hacked open years ago for exactly this purpose. The first rider to crest the fence earns a slug in the shoulder, tumbles backward. The rest scatter, firing blind. Below, Alma hauls the rug aside, lifts the cellar door. Cora lowers Rosalie into the darkness, then climbs down herself. Before following them, Alma darts to Elias's rifle case. She finds a family portrait, faces faded by sun, edges singed by some earlier tragedy. She slips the photo into her bodice and descends. In the tunnel thick dust deadens every breath. Cora leads, palm skimming the ceiling to judge height. Rosalie crawls second, cheeks damp with tears not entirely born of fear. Some part of her feels like Lot's wife, abandoning home for uncertain mercy. Alma brings up the rear, replacing loose stones to hide their passage. Above ground, Elias empties his Winchester, counts 4 men wounded, 1 horse down. He hears hammering at the front door, shouts demanding surrender. He fires both remaining shells, then slings the rifle aside, grabs a kerosene lamp, and hurls it down the stairwell. Flames bloom, blocking pursuit. Smoke rolls through rooms, claws at his lungs. He stumbles toward the cellar trap but finds only charred boards collapsing under heat. The way down is gone. Outside, the attackers set the barn alight in retaliation. Timbers pop, sparks drift skyward like dying fireflies. Elias sways between two infernos, vision tunneling. Then, amid the crackle, he hears it, thunder. Real thunder, not distant artillery. The sky, bruised for weeks, finally opens. Rain first spatters, then sheets in torrents. Flames hiss, gutters overflow. Relief floods the land and Elias together, and he laughs, half choke, half prayer. At the arroyo's lip Alma feels the first drop strike her neck. She urges the others faster, knowing water turns dry clay to sucking mud. They scramble toward a stand of cottonwoods where the stage stop once hummed with travelers. Behind them the farmhouse smolders under cleansing rain, and gunmen scatter, rifles damp, ambitions drowned. Elias staggers into the yard, rain sluicing away soot. The posse retreats, muttering about curses, bad omens. He watches until they vanish beyond the ridge. Lightning illuminates emptiness, the women are gone. For a breath he believes he hallucinated their arrival, just another mirage of the long drought. Then he notices footprints printed in fresh mud leading toward the dry well and understands the choice they made. He sinks to his knees, palms upturned to heaven that finally remembers him. On the horizon, a plume of smoke curls over the stage stop. Hope and fear mingle in his chest as he rises, reloads, and starts walking toward it, rain drumming a war beat on the tin of his battered hat, the portrait of his long-dead family still warm where Alma tucked it close to her heart. Dawn after the storm glows pale gold over the Pecos Basin, steam lifting from the soaked earth like a collective sigh. Elias Mercer tracks the women's footprints along the muddied arroyo, Winchester slung, eyes sharp for sign of ambush. All-night thunder kept him company, now only the chuff of a distant windmill and the wet creak of his boots break the hush. Ahead, the abandoned stage stop rises from mesquite scrub, 3 sagging buildings and a stone well whose rope still hangs, frayed but promising. He finds Rosalie first, kneeling by the well, rope wrapped around bleeding palms, muscles trembling as she fights the weight of a full bucket. Rain has washed soot from her face, revealing the raw bewilderment of a novice thrust into prairie war. Elias grips the rope beside her, hauls the bucket free, and hands her the first sip. Water spills down her chin. She laughs, half sob, at the absurd luxury of it. Gunmetal glints from the doorway of the relay house. Cora steps out, revolver aimed until she sees Elias alone. She lowers the weapon but not her guard. In the new light she looks older than her years, the night siege carved into stern resolve. Alma appears last, leading the mule Elias set loose. She found it grazing on cactus buds and coaxed it back with whispered Spanish lullabies learned from kitchen nuns. When she meets Elias's gaze, an unspoken ledger alters, debts, thanks, unanswered questions. They gather inside the crumbling adobe. Rainrot has softened the roof but left the clay walls solid. A rusted stove stands against one wall. Alma coaxes a fire with scraps of sagebrush, drying boots and spirits. Outside, the horizon stays empty, yet every clap of warped wood makes hearts jerk. The posse might regroup. The sheriff in Mesilla might ride out, swayed by righteous sermons. The convent might send men with chains. Behind each unknown lurks the certainty that 3 women and 1 scarred rancher cannot outgun the territory forever. Elias proposes heading north to Fort Sumner, 35 miles of open plain. Soldiers will grant safe conduct, he claims. The army pays bounty for skilled scouts, and Elias knows the arroyos like skin. Cora scoffs, soldiers barter favors, and 3 former novices carry value in frontier gossip. Rosalie shivers at the thought of uniformed strangers. Alma studies the map, finger tracing an alternate path west through Copper Canyon, toward a mining camp rumored abandoned after the load played out. Empty cabins, a mountain spring, high cliffs to deter raiders, it could be sanctuary if legend holds. Argument simmers until hoofbeats echo from the south ridge. The posse has found the trail. No time for votes. Elias shoulders the pack, slings water skins across the mule, and leads them through greasewood toward the canyon mouth, trusting Alma's intuition over his own beaten caution. The climb taxes every ragged breath. Rain-soaked clay clings to boots, doubling weight. Rosalie stumbles. Elias hoists her onto the mule despite her protests. Shots crack below, long-range Enfields. A slug whistles past Cora's ear, chips rock. She fires back once, more to claim courage than to score a hit. They crest a limestone shelf just as two riders break into view beneath. Alma topples a boulder, it crashes down, spooking the horses, buying minutes. Copper Canyon lives up to the name, sheer walls streaked russet and green, eucalyptus tang sharpening the air. Trickles of water glimmer along the base, evidence of the spring. The mining camp crouches in shadow, half-collapsed bunkhouse, blacksmith shed, or cart rusted to its rails. Yet smoke coils from a chimney. Not abandoned. Elias signals silence and circles wide. Through a crack in the bunkhouse wall he spots a man tending a still, thin, spectacled, maybe 50, humming an old hymn. A lone claimant guarding nothing but moonshine. Elias steps into the doorway, rifle lowered yet visible, and negotiates with the simplest currency, danger. Posse on their heels, women needing shelter, food scarce but water plentiful. The moonshiner, who introduces himself as Gideon Fletcher, weighs the odds and decides company beats dying alone. He pours tin cups of weak corn liquor and shows them the cavern where the spring rises cold and clean. Night folds over Copper Canyon with bats skittering across a violet sky. Exhaustion blurs edges. In the bunkhouse loft Rosalie finally sleeps dreamlessly. Cora sets snares along a game trail, knife glinting like intent. Gideon teaches Alma to patch sheet metal roof holes so rainwater can be collected in barrels. Elias stands sentry by a cliff ledge, listening to the canyon echo, no hoofbeats, only wind-threading juniper branches. Toward midnight Alma joins him. She pulls the family portrait from her bodice, returns it wordlessly. Elias accepts it as though receiving sacrament, thumb brushing the char line where fire once licked the frame. He tells her of small graves under mesquite, of a fever no doctor reached in time, of how silence grew louder than grief until even cattle shied from him. Alma speaks of convent bells, of vows chosen for her, of reading outlaw dime novels by candle after curfew and yearning for a world that bled and healed in equal measure. Words weave a fragile bridge across private ruins. Down in the valley campfire sparks betray the posse's bivouac. They will approach at dawn. Gideon knows a secret path, an ore chute carved through the cliff, wide enough for single file, descending to a box canyon whose exit can be blasted shut with powder still stored in the mine. He offers the plan, Elias refines it. They pack before first light, lay powder kegs where slate narrows, run the fuse along the chute. The posse rides in 2 columns, rifles up. They enter Copper Canyon guided by fresh tracks, unaware of the 4 figures perched above on a narrow ledge, fuse smoldering. At the last bend Gideon lights the line. Seconds stretch taut, Alma grips Rosalie's hand, nails digging crescent moons. The roar erupts, rock face shatters, dust swallows sunlight. When debris settles, the canyon mouth is a wall of rubble. Echoes fade. No cries reach the far side. Whether the posse lives or dies beyond the seal, none of them can know. Silence blooms immense. Cora exhales the breath she has held since the fuse lit, then turns to the spring and fills a canteen till it overflows. Gideon laughs in shaky relief and offers a toast with his diluted corn. Rosalie crosses herself, half grateful, half penitent. Elias watches Alma trace a finger along the canyon rim as though redrawing the map of her life. Days pass into weeks. They reinforce cabins with pine beams, plant beans along the stream terrace, tame the mule to haul or cart loads of firewood. Gideon rigs a still that turns spring water into coarse whiskey good enough for trading when peddlers wander near. Cora negotiates with passing Navajo shepherds, pelts for salt, news for medicine herbs. Rosalie tends a makeshift chapel in the blacksmith shed, open doors, no vows demanded. Alma convinces Elias to rebuild the windmill gears scavenged from the stage stop, blades spin again, creaking a song of perpetual motion. One evening summer rain drifts soft as sighs and the four of them sit beneath the awning, plates of jackrabbit stew steaming in their laps. Gideon strums a cracked mandolin, melodies breaking like dawn across the canyon walls. Lightning silhouettes cottonwoods and, just beyond, a single lamplit window of the bunkhouse where no fear sleeps anymore. Elias catches Alma watching him. In her look he sees not rescue but invitation, to live forward instead of backward, to let the land's slow healing mirror his own. He raises his tin cup, she meets it with hers. Water, nothing more sacred, splashes between. The night hums with crickets and distant thunder that promises rain without wrath, and for the first time in seasons uncounted, the forgotten farmer no longer measures life by what the desert stole but by what fragile, stubborn hope has dared to root in its place. Autumn arrives without ceremony, just a morning chill that sneaks beneath blankets and a copper light that lingers a beat longer on the canyon wall. Copper Canyon has started to look almost lived in, beans ripen in tidy rows, rain barrels stay half full, and a line of bright cloth, Rosalie's dresses cut down into shirts, flutters between two pinyon trunks. From the ridge the settlement could be mistaken for any small ranch, which is exactly the disguise its residents hope for. Yet peace on the frontier seldom rides alone. One cool dusk Gideon limps back from checking beaver traps with news that rattles every cup on the rough-hewn table. A railroad survey crew has been spotted 10 miles east, staking grades for the Southern Pacific Spur. Where rails go, law follows. Where law goes, questions bloom like fever rash. Copper Canyon's thin veil of anonymity may soon tear. Elias listens, jaw set. He has known railroads to be both lifelines and gravediggers. Alma reads his silence, steps in before the old dread can plant roots. She argues that a spur could mean a legitimate market for whiskey, hides, even beans. If they meet the surveyors first, on their own terms, Copper Canyon might earn a name instead of a warrant. Cora agrees, though her eyes never leave the horizon. She has seen opportunity morph into chains before. Rosalie prays aloud for guidance, her voice steady even as her fingers fret the rosary smooth. They decide at dawn to ride out. Elias, Alma and Cora will take the mule loaded with whiskey jugs and fresh water. Gideon stays to guard the canyon with Rosalie, whose talent for calm has become their surest rifle. The trail east winds across open chaparral, yellow grass swaying like surf until heat shimmers erase distance. Midway they find wreckage, a survey marker snapped, papers scattered, boot prints running in wild angles, and beside a mesquite stump the body of a young engineer, throat cut, maps drenched crimson. Bandits? Apaches wouldn't leave iron tools untouched. Elias notes hoof tracks heading north, shod horses, for at least. Professional raiders, then, ones who know the value of a delayed railroad. Alma kneels, closes the engineer's eyes, pockets the blood-speckled map. She and Elias bury the man beneath cairn stones while Cora stands sentinel, revolver cocked. By the time they reach the survey camp, Union tents billow like surrender flags. Two surviving engineers stagger about, rifles badly shouldered, relief flooding their faces when the trio emerges with water. Elias offers whiskey to steady hands while Alma spreads the rescued map. The line proposed slices straight through Copper Canyon. Negotiation feels odd in the raw morning light. The chief surveyor, McCourt, insists the canyon route is the only grade gentle enough for locomotives, diverting would cost weeks. Alma counters with topography gleaned from nights studying the cliff maze, sketching an alternate cut south where shale is softer. McCourt scoffs at a convent girl's geology until Elias demonstrates by driving a pick clean into a shale sample while McCourt's foreman chip sparks off a copper seam. Time is money. McCourt does the math and grudgingly agrees to inspect the alternate pass if guides will lead him. That night Elias and Alma share a canteen beside the campfire while Cora slips among tents, gleaning rumors. She learns the raiders are hired guns for a rival land syndicate that has bet heavily on a northern spur. If Copper Canyon folk guide the railroad safely south, they'll buy enemies whose bankroll outstrips any posse seen so far. Cora relays this at first light, choice now hangs between risking annihilation for the promise of legitimacy or slipping back into obscurity and praying no more surveyors die on their doorstep. They ride home weighted by possibility. Halfway, thunderheads pile over the horizon and burst, turning the trail to chocolate mud. The mule balks, nearly spilling whiskey and maps. Alma laughs, a bright, reckless sound, as warm rain soaks them. For a moment even caution grins. At Copper Canyon, Rosalie meets them with grim news. A rider delivered a folded sermon page to the gatepost, the Reverend's seal pressed into wax. Return the lost sisters, it reads, or face a reckoning righteous and final. Gideon found the courier's tracks skirting high ledges, too swift to pursue. Threats, like weeds, thrive on neglect. Silence has only emboldened the Reverend. Elias stands before the bunkhouse hearth, map in one hand, sermon in the other, and feels the pinch of old loneliness clawing again. Alma touches his wrist, reminds him they have allies now, engineers who owe them lives, shepherds who trade, even the land itself which has started gifting them water. Fight or flee, they will no longer do so alone. McCord arrives 2 days later with 6 armed railroad men. He tours the southern shale cut, taps ridges, gauges grade, and by dusk pounds a stake that marks Copper Canyon as milepost zero of a new spur. He offers contracts, payment for right-of-way, wages for timber crews, a formal deed acknowledging Elias as proprietor. Gideon laughs that a forgotten farm will soon ship beans by the ton. Rosalie sees divine symmetry in rail ties bridging isolation. Cora eyes the armed guards and wonders what price tags dangle unseen. Celebration is brief. That night, long shadows crest the canyon rim, the Reverend's zealous entourage, 30 strong, lanterns held high, hymn rising like a war chant. At their fore rides the preacher in black frock and silver cross, voice booming judgment across the ravine. He declaims sin, kidnapping, fornication, calls for the return of wayward lambs, before dawn or God's wrath, augmented by rifles, will cleanse the valley. McCourt's men fan out, lever actions cocking. The Reverend's followers light torches, intent clear. Between them stands Copper Canyon's fragile dream of home and railway. Elias steps to the edge, lifts the old Winchester, but does not aim. Instead he speaks, quietly at first, then louder, story upon story, of drought, of mercy by strangers' hands, of graves dug lonely and futures planted stubborn. Alma steps beside him, recounts convent confines and the terror of choices made by others. Cora describes raids, the taste of fear, the right to shape one's own legend. Rosalie raises both arms and prays, not for victory, but for recognition of the common thirst every soul shares beneath sun and sermon alike. Something in their chorus unsettles the gathered host. Torches falter. The Reverend's litany stutters when McCourt shouts that railroad charters outrank ecclesiastic claims. Any bullet fired tonight risks federal reprisal. Economics, it seems, speaks in tongues all men understand. One by one riders turn away, him thinning to embarrassed murmurs. The Reverend, isolated, spits dust, vows appeal to higher courts, then wheels his horse and disappears into darkness. Dawn cracks open on a canyon still whole. No blood spilled, no powder fired. Only the lingering echo of words and the slow realization that guns are not the only currency of power. Weeks slide forward on iron rails. Crews arrive, spike lines, raise telegraph poles. Barrels of Gideon's whiskey roll aboard flatcars, sacks of canyon beans follow. Navajo shepherds trade wool for steel tools. The name Copper Canyon begins appearing on freight ledgers, then on maps. The Reverend's threats dwindle to rumor. Perhaps he has found fiercer devils elsewhere. One late winter morning a locomotive whistles at the new siding, steam pluming against snow-dusted cliffs. Elias stands with Alma on the platform he built from salvaged barn planks. She slips her hand into his, neither asking what comes next nor promising what forever means, simply anchoring the moment. Cora loads crates of leatherwork bound for Santa Fe, eyes bright with enterprise. Rosalie distributes hot coffee to frost-numbed brakemen, her chapel doors now welcoming anyone chasing holiness or just shelter from wind. Gideon haggles over freight rates, spectacles fogging as he laughs about fortunes distilled from corn mash. The train pulls away, wheels singing on rails that would never have crossed this gorge had four fugitives not chosen courage over flight. Echoes fade into the morning hush, replaced by the steady creak of a rebuilt windmill pumping water for the next crop. Elias watches the horizon where track meets sky and realizes the farm he thought lost was never the land but the will to belong. In Copper Canyon, that will has taken shape, in timber and iron, in shared labor, in stories swapped beside a scarce but stubborn spring, proof that even the harshest desert grants second harvests to those bold enough to plant hope. And somewhere beyond the far ridge, a forgotten grave lies beneath mesquite, yet is no longer an anchor dragging him backward, it is a marker of distance traveled. He breathes the cold air, tastes iron and pine, and feels the future rumble beneath his boots like a coming train, unstoppable, bound always for bright country ahead.